Hello, everyone, and welcome back to IndieX 2024. Today, we're kicking off the afternoon slots with Intravenous 2, a self titled love letter to tactical stealth action. The game is quite hard and challenging, as you will see, and so today I'm very lucky to be joined by the dev behind the game, Roman. And luckily, he is a very good player because I was wondering already how am I going to be able to keep up some thrilling gameplay and actually get us through some levels and showcase the mechanics while still being able to ask some relevant questions. But luckily, Roman made it through, and he will, as an expert, he's going to help me actually do that. Hey, Roman, how are you feeling today?
All right, feeling pretty good. Thank you for having me here.
That's nice. Just to warn everyone, if you are watching at home, feel free to leave your questions in the chat about the game, anything you want to ask Homan about, because we will be looking into it, and then later on we will pull those questions and ask them to Homan. Homan, do you want to give us kind of a brief introduction to yourself, a brief introduction to the game before we dive into the gameplay?
Sure. So, my background as a developer, really, I started with modding games, and it's sort of I never really thought I would end up making games for a living, and something that I never even thought I would make a single game, even really. Um, but that's how the cards landed. Uh, Back in 2014, I managed to join a mobile game development company where I worked as a programmer. And in 2017, I left the company to finish my first game called Game Dev Studio. It's a game development simulation company, game
Mhm.
development simulation game. And the inspiration for it came from, well, just working at that game development company. So after that, when I finished Game Dev Studio, I thought to myself, okay, what other game would I want to make? And the first thing that came to my mind is, well, it's been a while since I played a stealth action game that I would, have a lot of fun playing. And that's how the first Intravenous game was made. Then once I finished Intravenous 1, I moved on to Intravenous 2. And with Intravenous 2, it was a little bit different. So there are two sides to it. The first side is there were a lot of things in Intravenous 1 that I wish I had the time and the budget to do, and and obviously I didn't have that since I spent pretty much all my savings on making the first game. And so I started working on it and implementing all these new features that I wish I had in the first game. And then the second side is the story in the game is a metaphor for the feelings I was going through when my dad was deathly ill with COVID. He was put in quarantine for 2 to 3 months, if I recall correctly, and we didn't see him in that time period. And in the first 2 weeks, it was really bad, and we thought that he wasn't going to make it. So in our minds, we had already come to the terms that he probably was not going to make it. But luckily, he did, and so things were going fine. Um, but he was still rather old and sickly. He had cancer, and I was hoping I could finish Intravenous 2 while he was still with us, but unfortunately, on June 1st of 2023, he passed away from a blood clot that formed after he fell and broke several ribs. So the game Intravenous 2 is essentially my way of immortalizing my father. And I wish I could have finished the game while he was still here, but unfortunately, that never came to be.
Okay, thank you very much for that very in-depth answer. And yeah, I'm sure if your dad were here, he would be proud to see what you've accomplished. Because as we're going to soon see, Intravenous is very deep. It's got a very focused kind of gameplay. I'm sure we're going to talk all about it, but I think yeah, let's let the actual game speak for itself actually, and showcase what you can do with the
Mhm.
game.
Okay, so this level is fairly close to the intro. This is the second or third gameplay level, and we start as Steve. This is the game has two protagonists. It has Sean and Steve, and Steve makes a comeback from the first game, and he's sort of this commando type guy who has a burning, passionate hatred for drug dealers and like all these underground organizations which deal in drugs and manufacture them. So in this game, after the events of the first game, Steve tried to reintegrate into society, and he was unable to do it. and he went back to his trademark, so to speak. So right now I'm picking a breaker box which I can use to flip the switches off in this building. I will use that to pass through undetected and potentially take out another enemy inside the building. So
Yes.
that's number
As you
one.
can see from this, I mean, I think I am actually covering some of the HUD elements, but people can look at it and think, okay, yeah, it's a basic stealth game, but as you play through it, you actually see that you have all this kind of information. So all the weapons, all the armor, all the decisions you make about your movement, how do you do it, what kind of pose you're in, all of this generates noise levels that affect severely the gameplay, and how basically you can avoid or be detected due to your own mistakes. Um, when you started up with Intravenous and Intravenous 2, was this a big point of the design? Did you really want to make sure that every single decision the player is making, either not just from the game to moment gameplay, but also like the kind of weapons they choose and armor? Did you want to make this, let's say, a high risk, high reward system for the player in terms of what he can do at any moment?
For the gameplay, I really deferred more to older games like Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow, because those are stealth games that I grew up with, and they have the exact stealth gameplay that I like to see in games. So when designing the gameplay, the idea was to oh, somebody just noticed that one of the guys is missing. This guy has just noticed that I took out the guy who was patrolling, and somehow he's not there anymore. So, but to answer your question, uh, sorry, where did I leave off? Because I get distracted by this guy.
Yes, absolutely. So, you were saying you were more inspired in terms of following the old gameplay that you liked to see in other games when you're
Yeah,
designing these systems. Yeah.
yeah. So the idea for the gameplay, for the difficulty of it, was to make it so that the preferred way to play is stealth. But this doesn't mean that the combat side of things should be bad. You know, usually when people think of stealth games, they usually stealth games have only one way to play, and that is stealth. And with Intravenous, I wanted to have equally. Uh, I wanted to make the player equally good at combat as they are in stealth. And so the idea was to make stealth the preferred way to play, but also make it very viable to play fast paced and high, as you said, high stakes, high reward.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, right now you decided to basically unlock the door, but you could have just shot the door, which would, of course, make a lot of noise, or you could
Mm-hmm.
have bashed the door in after several attempts, which would make less noise but would take more time because you actually have to bash it several times. So, this kind
Mm-hmm.
of, I really enjoyed when I was playing this kind of idea that I can stop for a little bit and really decide, okay, if no one is around, I can just be brash and go for it. Or do I really need to approach this really carefully and take my time and make sure that I'm doing the correct actions? So you mentioned you were, of course, inspired by games like Deus Ex and other kinds of stealth games that you really liked. Did you
Mm-hmm.
find when kind of researching the gameplay of these games, were there any points that you thought, okay, I can do what this game is doing, but I can also kind of make some slight changes here and there that I think would really make a difference for the player in making a better experience, or at least modernizing the experience of these older games, bringing it to the current
Mm-hmm.
market.
Well, yeah. Ultimately, I did not try to imitate the games that I drew inspiration from. At its core, Intravenous is, all the games that I was inspired by and drew inspiration from. It's basically my attempt at tying together all the features that I like in games into one package. And so I can't think of any particular features off the top of my head that I thought could use for modernization.
Mhm.
Uh, but the one thing I can tell you is that, for example, like I said, usually when people think of stealth games, they think stealth exclusively or
Mhm.
stealth as in kill everyone quietly, and that's the kind of gameplay I don't like in games. Oh, and there we go.
That's
It's that
exactly the
easy.
kind of gameplay that you were showing us right now, right? When the shit hits
Yeah.
the fan, you have to go.
Oh yeah, you have to go fast and you have to be aware of your surroundings. And the way the combat is designed, it's you have to use darkness and stealth in combat, otherwise it becomes very difficult to play. So stealth is an integral part of combat itself. For example, right now I will basically try to go combat only, and you'll see exactly what I mean.
Okay. Oh yeah, so you have to be aware of all possible
Mhm.
flanking directions.
Oh yeah.
So spatial awareness, use of obstacles and lighting basically to cover your ass.
Hmm.
Other access points.
Absolutely every single possible direction that they could come from, you have to be aware of it. Yeah. This door is open.
Oh, and I know the game has actually several difficulty modes. Um, I only tried myself easy and normal because I'm a noob, so I didn't want to go any higher than normal.
Hmm.
But are there actually, did you try to implement any AI behavior changes when you go to higher difficulties as well?
Yeah, so on the hardest difficulty, which is true, it's basically the intended way to play the game, really. And on that difficulty, the AI starts to fire back and suppress you more than they do on the lower difficulties. So, for example, also on the normal difficulty or on easy, I don't remember exactly on which, uh, enemies, or rather, the player does not. The health level of the player does not influence his movement speed. But on the higher
Mm.
difficulties, like hard and true, the lower your health is, the slower you move. And so health also plays into how good you are at combat and at stealth, aside from basically being the only thing keeping you from dying. I like
So
it
you
when
kind of,
games, yeah, I like it when games, when the gameplay in games is multifaceted, and even things like the health influencing the movement speed. I love it when games do that. It's the little things that make games so fun to play. So as we just saw there in the cutscene, the first protagonist has reached the target, and we're switched back to the beginning of the level. But now we're playing from the perspective of the second protagonist.
Mhm.
We went in, we were loud, we made a mess. There's lots of dead people. This time we get to pick what we want to start out with, because this character actually does have access to the black market, which is where all the guns come from in this game. So since we are already loud and we have already made a mess, I will pick a shotgun. I will put an extended magazine on it, a compensator so that I can recover from the recoil of each shot faster. So basically, I will put on everything that I can to make this weapon more fit for combat. And then for this, I will keep using the same pistol that the other character started with, because it's good for isolated cases when somebody's isolated and you want to take them out quietly, because this is the quietest pistol in the game. It's because any other weapon that you suppress, it's not going to be very quiet. And down here we have armor. The heavier the armor you pick is, the more movement speed you lose and the more noise you make while you're moving. So for example, if I would pick this armor vest, I'm going to move slower than if I had this one on, right? But I'm still going to make the exact same amount of noise. Now, next up, I will pick a grenade and maybe a taser. And instead of this, since we're not gonna really need this anymore, I'll pick a medkit, since I might get I might catch a stray bullet.
So this is really a great showcase of the amount of kind of depth and customization of the experience you can have. Because as you mentioned before, not only is this kind of like, okay, I'm picking my loadout at the beginning of the mission. Sure, it is kind of, but you do this kind of fresh take on it, where not only can you kind of prepare already the ground for the next character coming in, and then you can even make more decisions on top of that and really be like, I already had to deal with this, this, and this, so now I don't need
Mm-hmm.
this kind of equipment. I can just fully adapt on the fly, as long as you have money, of course, and really customize. I really like that about the game, and how this also helps replayability, because yeah, once you can play the mission stealthy, like you said, otherwise just go all guns blazing, do a mix of both, and then of course this will also affect how the second part of the mission plays out, because it can be way easier or way harder. So I think that's really really interesting. And as you mentioned, you kind of built this multi-layered system where You have to kind of do also some kind of resource management in terms of health because it also affects your gameplay capabilities. And I believe this really gives the player, this causes what I like to call emergent gameplay. So different players who have different experiences, not because they make these very specific dialogue choices or something, but because the emergent gameplay itself, the equipment they bring with them, the actions they do, and all the how much health they had, can they move this fast, can they not do this? It all creates different scenarios, and then it really brings this different experience to the player. So I found that was really a good investment of your development time in the game. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that was the whole idea. Basically, the design philosophy for Intravenous 1 and 2 can be split up into two parts. The first part is you can't have it all. For example, in a lot of games, which is also something that I don't particularly like, um, you can pick like the most effective loadout that works best for both combat and for stealth. I don't particularly like that when things are designed that way because I believe that for whichever way you are on like the scale, there should be some kind of penalty for the things that you bring. So, for example, if you catch yourself out of heavy things, rifles, pistols, grenades, and other things, I believe there should be some kind of penalty. And in Travinus One, it comes in the shape of movement noise and movement speed, which directly plays into how good you can be in combat and also how good you are at stealth. And aside from that, the second part of the game's design philosophy is basically I give the player a bunch of tools, I give them a level, and I just tell the player go crazy, do what you want to do.
So since you give, I mean, there's kind of this give and take. So when you give the player a lot of tools and a lot of stuff they can do, this kind of makes your job as a dev harder in the sense that you have to balance, as you mentioned, like you don't want there to be this Swiss Army knife. So you really have to go in and balance all of this stuff so that you can try and test and see how can the
Mhm.
player not be too overpowered but still have a good chance at winning. Was it highly challenging for you to balance this? For example, did you think that the experience you had already had with Intravenous One helped you out to kind of already know where to go and what things to look for to make like this balanced experience for the players?
Well, after Intravenous 2, I more or less had an idea of what I wanted from the game in terms of design, things like that. But there are still things I would like to improve in the second game. So I took note of things I wanted to improve. I I took notes of obviously I knew what features I wanted to add, but some features did require extra testing. So for example, we had a prologue project called Mercenarism, and one of the gadgets in the game called the gas grenade, which I'll just open up the loadout menu here since I'm in debug mode. The gas grenade, what it does is it basically the enemies cannot see the gas that spreads from it, and I'll just take the Molotov also. Why the hell not? The enemies cannot see the gas that spreads from it, right? And so they would run into the gas and immediately get knocked out. There would be no period during which they have to basically inhale enough of the
Mhm.
gas to pass out. The moment they would get close to the gas, that's it. It's over. They're out of the game. And the prologue made it clear that this was overpowered because not only was the radius too great, for example, if you throw it outdoors and indoors, and before the prologue project, the gas grenade would spread the gas out evenly everywhere. So, for example, it would
Mm.
spread 5 times, both indoors and outdoors. And for outdoors, that was kind of overpowered.
Yeah.
So the first change was to make it so that the gas spreads less outdoors, since it's an open space and there's no roofs, it's not enclosed. The gas can go up and basically be carried away by the wind. Whereas indoors, it spreads a lot less, or rather, a lot more, since it's an enclosed space and it has nowhere
Oh
to
yeah,
go.
big difference.
And yeah, yeah, and so that's the first thing. The second thing is once the inhale having to inhale enough gas to pass out system was added, this also made the gas grenades less effective and less overpowered. And for the Molotov cocktail as well, if you throw it on carpets, it's going to spread everywhere. As long as the surface is flammable, it's going to spread like crazy. So right now it's sort of just standing there. but as time goes by, it's going to start spreading in both directions.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, and this kind of let's say material quality is also something that I think really grounds the player because even though the art style is quite, as you say, inspired by the retro games also as well, so a little bit not extremely realistic. I think the fact
Mhm.
that you took so much the into consideration, like the gas dispersal, the burnability of materials, to kind of make it so when a player has an idea in the head, it kind of gets translated really well into their expectations of what is going to happen. So when they throw something, they're like, I'm expecting this to happen, and then it actually happens. That sensation is really important for this kind of immersion of the player and this kind of feeling of, yeah, this game understands me. It understands what I want to do as a player, and it gives me the correct feedback once I do it. So I think it's a really well thought out mechanic as well, to grip the player. Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Yeah, the fire. I mean, it would be kind of weird if you like equipped a Molotov cocktail, threw it on the carpet, and then it just spread in some like very like arbitrary radius that it spreads on every surface. So for Intravenous, when designing all the gadgets and the weapons and how all these things work and the AI, I try to ground everything in reality in the sense that it's still a game. It knows that it's a game. It does not try to be real life, but it applies many different rules from real life to all of the gameplay mechanics that are in the game. So, for example, fire doesn't spread on tiles, fire doesn't spread on asphalt, on concrete, but you throw that sucker onto carpet, it's gonna just screw everything up.
Nice. Yeah. So talking a
Okay.
little bit about kind of the art, because we did mention now briefly, um, for the art, were you mostly also inspired by the same games as you had before, or did you have a more your own idea of how the game should look like? For and yeah,
Not really. For the art side of things, the art style is identical between Intravenous 1 and 2. I didn't really have any particular idea of how it should look, or nor did I really, want it to look a particular way. The only thing I knew is that I like pixel art and top-down games and side-scroller games, and that's what I wanted to stick with. And so, when it comes to the art style, I worked with a very, very extremely talented artist. His handle on Twitter is Gregor MacNeil. He's extremely talented at pixel art, and so I just told him, "Hey, this is what I'm gonna make. Here's what I need. Go crazy." And the quality of his art is fantastic. It set the art style for the first game, and then I worked with even more artists on the second game, and we used the art style of the first game as a base for everything the other artists made.
so talking about like this kind of collaborative aspect, because as a dev, you were the only one making the game, but of course you had these people backing you in the art side of things. Did you collaborate with the artists in terms of like also design? So when you're making a kind of effect, for example, or making the UI or making the menus, you have to make sure that this is legible and clear and understandable by the player. Did you have this kind of back and forth with the design team? Did you enjoy the experience, for example?
Yeah, so for example, for UI, I did tell them what how I basically told them what information I needed. I need the interface to display. I'm not particularly sure whether I even gave any input to when we were designing the interface for the first game. But basically, I would tell the artist what the interface needed to display and like which information, right? And then anytime they would show me what they've done, like if there was something that I thought was for example not displaying the right information or not stressing it enough, then I would just tell them and they would tweak it, and they would basically make it work. But aside from that, they're really on this in the second game. I believe I there was a bit more back and forth because I wanted it to be like a more coherent, consistent experience in terms of how all the UI looks together. But aside from that, I don't think there really was much back and forth. The artists they basically knew what they were doing. So in that regard, like I said, I told them what I need done. I gave the task to them. I told them, go crazy, and they made a great interface.
Awesome. Um, Talking about now a little bit to the journey between Intravenous 1 to Intravenous 2. For example, uh, did you build a community already big enough with Intravenous 1 that you had a lot of feedback on the features, on the design, on the look of the game that you could apply to Intravenous 2? I'm curious about that and how you engaged with the community you already built.
Mm, Honestly, I didn't. I did not engage with the community all that much, because most of my time was spent on developing the game, and also 2022 was 2022, and the first half of 2023 was a crazy year for me, incredibly busy. So I didn't have time for I didn't have enough time to split between both working on the game and interacting with the community. I remember I would basically just give the community heads up on like little hints at first, and then I made a big reveal that hey, a sequel is coming. But aside from that, really there wasn't much interaction on my part. Like I said, I was extremely busy in those years.
Mhm. Um, did you get some feedback from them on the game itself, or were you mostly like, okay, I did the first game, I know what I can improve on what I want to do. Let's just go and do the second game while the iron is hot and get it to the level that you wanted, right?
hmm With the second game, we had a demo version in the beginning of 2024, if I recall correctly, and then we also had the prologue project in like February of 2024, I believe. I don't recall exactly, and we used that to get a lot of feedback for the game. And yeah, we basically got a lot of feedback from there, lots and lots of bug reports, feature, like very how do I put this, very
Feature
small feature tweaks
suggestions.
here and there. Yeah. And for example, one of the things that I got from a playtest of Intravenous 2 was, so you can get inside the vent shaft like this, right?
Hmm.
Or you can go prone and climb inside it like this. This wasn't
Yeah.
a thing in the first game. In the first game, you had to climb, you had to stand up before you were able to climb inside the vent shaft. And it's like it's one of those things where you're like, I got the feedback that hey, like why the hell can I not like get inside this vent shaft? And basically, you could get inside the vent shaft, but because the person was prone, he thought it was bugged. And I was sitting
Mhm.
there thinking, why the hell did I not make it so people could climb in the vent shafts while prone? And there it is. So it's like one of those things where you don't think of it, and then
Mhm.
when somebody makes like an offhand comment, you're like, what the hell? How did I? This was so obvious. Why did I not do anything about this?
Yeah, sometimes we cannot see because we have so much things going on in the head. You're thinking about balancing so much and checking so much that these little details can get by through us. I
Mhm.
think you also wrote the story actually for the game. So how has it been to kind of have to balance all the different aspects of like creating a story, writing it, also doing a lot of balancing, a lot of tweaking, a lot of hard coding into the game, and also kind of managing the freelancing side? Do you have any preferred part of development, for example, that you like more to do?
Oh, 1 second. I just realized that I think my webcam is like stuck on the stream. Is that a problem?
Oh,
I think
she
it's like
seems to be
completely
stuck.
stuck. Yeah. Okay, I will try refreshing the page. 1 sec.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, I can. It's no problem.
Okay, so
You
in
have a
regards
very
to
stoic background. You get this stoic image. He never moves while playing. No stress. Yeah. So yeah, that's fine. Do
the
you want me to
ultimate,
repeat the question
yeah,
or?
it was in regards to the writing. Honestly, Honestly, I didn't think that much about balancing things. Like I said, the story is a metaphor for the feelings I was going through when my dad was deathly ill with COVID and quarantined for 2 to 3 months. So I just drew inspiration from that, and then I just tried to basically make the game longer, and that required adding more characters, things like that. The story in the second game had a lot more thought and effort put into it compared to the first game. Uh, but aside from that, I really didn't try to like follow some kind of specific guideline. It was just I guess in a way it's like uh man, I don't know. This is a bit of a tricky question.
Hmm.
I wrote down the basic gist of it. I wrote down the like more or less what's going to happen in the story. Then I started writing the dialogues, and I like went over them like I don't know 10, 20, maybe 30 times. But aside from that, no, there really wasn't a whole lot of thought put into balancing these things. I wanted the way I wrote the story is uh I tried to set up various gameplay situations for the player, uh use like and justify it with the story, right? So the story dictates what kind of situation the player finds himself in, and so ultimately it all like it all calls back to gameplay where the story serves the gameplay and not the other way around,
Hmm.
if that makes
Makes
sense.
sense. Yeah, makes sense for the type of game it is, of course, and for the kind of player that will be attracted to these kinds of games. I think it makes sense. Of course, you cannot just speed some
Yeah.
story onto the page, let's say, but it makes more sense that the story is
Yeah.
serving the gameplay itself, than the other way around for sure.
Yeah, I mean, going into the story of Intravenous 1 and 2, I knew just fine that I am no writer. I'm an amateur
Mhm.
at best at writing these things. And so I just wrote a story. With the first game, I wrote a story that was like, okay, I need a story for the game. I'll just write up a generic revenge story which justifies the gameplay, like explains why the gameplay is the way it is. And for the second game, I tried putting a lot more effort into it, but ultimately, I'm an amateur. I'm no writer, so the story does not try to be something like super duper like nuanced or have a whole lot of depth. It's very simple. The protagonist's father gets kidnapped after he messes up a head job, and the protagonist now has to try and figure out who it was while being blackmailed into killing other people, and to hopefully save his dad and take revenge on the people that kidnapped his father.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, as a solo dev, you really have to like focus on your strengths. And if you
Hmm.
know that you're good at making the gameplay flow and making a fun, balanced game with replayability, then it really serves you to not focus too much on the other aspects. Try just to focus all of them into being cohesive and serving the strength, which is in this case the gameplay. Makes complete sense, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, if I
Was
if I
there
went,
any? Yeah, you
yeah,
can go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say that if I like focused explicitly on the story, or uh, like I neglected the gameplay side of things in favor of the story, I believe I would have done a horrible job.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. But talking about that, so if you're focusing more on gameplay, was there any particular feature or achievement during the development that you were really like, I would really like to include this in the game, and that you were proud and that you were actually able to put it in the final game?
Specifically, feature.
Can be a feature or an aspect, something that you, when you think about Intravenous 2, you're like, oh yeah, I'm really glad that I did this specific thing and that it made it to the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the biggest, I'm on the biggest is like subjective. It's like, uh, um, the thing that I'm glad I put in the game the most is the weapon modification system, because in the first game you had weapons, right? Some of them had a suppressor on, but they were like they those weapons were like, I think there were only three of them. From an arsenal of like almost 30 weapons, you only had three of them which were suppressed, right? So quieter. only one of them was considered to be actually quiet, and the other two were much louder. And so for like if your plan was to take people out and hope that nobody heard you, you wouldn't have to use the quietest pistol, which is also terrible for combat. And so with the weapon customization system, that sort of flips everything around. The weapons are still balanced in a way that, like, even if you suppress them and use subsonic ammo, they're still going to be loud. But it gives the player way more flexibility in how he approaches pretty much any situation. You can have an assault rifle that's suppressed with subsonic ammunition, and then you can have a pistol that's completely kitted out to be just super hardcore for combat. And the rifle will be good enough if you get detected. And for example, you get detected, right? And there are, let's say, three enemies around you, right? And then off of in the distance, there are like lots and lots of enemies. But because your rifle is suppressed, you can take them out without any of the enemies. Like you shoot one of the three guys, right? All of them hear the gunshot, but all the other guys around further away from you, they don't hear that. And so the three guys try to take you out, and as long as you're able to take those three guys out without any of them letting out a shot, the enemies far away from you are not going to hear it, and you'll be able to have both a weapon that's good enough in combat, but it can also save your ass in stealth.
So it
So I
kind
would
of
say,
creates, yeah.
yeah, I would say that the weapon customization system is like the biggest feature that I'm glad I integrated into the second game.
That's great because yeah, as you mentioned, it kind of creates not this idea of like, okay, stealth is only like this kind of melee and like short range experience where I'm just considering like, okay, there's one or two guys. I have to kind of just go around them and then take this guy out and then take this guy out. You can just think also about it like as a preferably like a mid-range stealth build. So I can engage in combat throughout the mission and not actually bring everyone to me, but only like small things that I can actually manage. So it really, like you mentioned as well before, creates this customization of the experience of like really gradual levels of like combat and stealth instead of just being like it's combat, it's stealth, it's combat, it's stealth. It makes this kind of like large encounters and small encounters with enemies, so it kind of increases the amount of players you can serve with the gameplay, which I think is really really good. Yeah.
The first game was like very punishing in the way it handled suppressed weapons, in the sense that um, well, it has to do with the way the game handles noise propagation. But in the first game, if you would use a suppressed weapon, and let's say you're inside a building, right? Let's say you're inside a building and there's one pair of walls, a second pair of walls, three pairs of walls, right? And so you're confined within like this sarcophagus of concrete, a bunch of hallways. In the first game, it doesn't matter. The enemies, like the enemies would still end up hearing you.
Yeah.
The walls did soak up some noise, but not a whole lot. But in the second game, it takes into consideration how many walls there are between you and the enemy that might hear you, and so there are more cases in the second game where if you take someone out of a suppressed pistol indoors, no one's going to hear you. But if you are outdoors at the same distance towards some enemy, they're going to hear you just fine. And so this creates this like gradational uh, stealth system, I believe, where you can choke someone out from the back and it's as quiet as it can get. Then you can punch someone out, that makes a little bit of noise. Then you can use the taser, that makes a tiny bit more noise. Then you can use the tranquilizer rifle or the multi launcher, which are also a little bit noisier, but just a tiny bit. And then you move on to the firearms. You use the quietest stealth pistol on someone. It's as quiet as a firearm can get, but it's still loud. And then you move on to bigger caliber pistols, they're even louder. And so it's not like a the binary system where enemies either hear you or they don't. It's basically shades of gray, where and lots and whether someone hears you or not depends on many different factors.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. um did you get any feedback on kind of this gradation of the stealth system so that people felt like the situations they were getting into and the response they were getting from the AI felt fair to like the actions that they were taking. So, like you mentioned, for example, if I shoot a gun, I'm expecting this kind of reaction. Did you
Mhm.
get any feedback on that, or were people mostly felt like it was a good system that was fair?
I will say that in the first game it was too punishing, and so I remember getting quite a decent amount of feedback from people who did not like the fact that guns are loud, and so the system is less punishing in the second game. But it's how do I put this? The system is less punishing, but guns are even louder than they were in the first game. Like if you're
Really?
outdoors, right, and you fire a suppressed weapon, there's like it travels further, if I recall correctly. But that's the general gist that I got from it, is that in the first game, stealth was more difficult when it comes to guns, but in the second game, stealth is more difficult when it comes to AI.
All right,
So
that's good. Yeah.
yeah, so the AI in the second game gained a couple of new tricks. Well, like not tricks, but like how do I say this? They're more aware, if that makes sense. So, for example, if you play on the hardest difficulty and you take someone out who is patrolling somewhere, right? Let's say there's two guys. One goes like this, right, and the other goes like this, and at some point their patrol paths intersect, right? And so you take out the guy that walks like this, right? That patrols this area. The guy that walks like this will eventually notice that, hey, my patrol buddy is gone. What the hell's going on? So it's things like that which make the stealth more difficult, but at the same time, the weapon customization menu, system makes the stealth easier. But
Mhm.
generally, yeah, that's stealth gameplay was really punishing the moment you went loud in the first game, and in the second game, it's a little bit easier.
Mhm. Nice. I don't know if you can talk about anything else, but the Intravenous 2 has been released, of course. Do you have any like personal wish to keep working on this genre to make another game, or do you want to go somewhere else and explore maybe other things?
Oh, honestly, I have no idea. Intravenous 2, the 12 months leading up to the game's release, so from August of 2023 to August of 2024, it was a crazy time in terms of the amount of work I had to get done to make it on time. And by no means am I saying it's the publisher's fault. No, this was a deadline that I set for myself by myself. I told the publisher, hey guys, I can finish the game in 12 months. So, trust me on that. And that what was in the contract. And looking back on it, I would have given myself at least 3 more months just to not have to work at a breakneck pace all the time. uh, but I'm currently so burned out that I don't even know if I want to make another stealth action game. I'm sort of in that phase where nothing seems cool to me, that nothing that I would want to work on seems cool to me, because my state of mind is, Jesus Christ, I just want to break.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, the last months of development can be absolutely crushing.
Oh
So it
yeah.
makes sense to take a breath and like maybe get even like inspired by other stuff, other
Yep.
movies, other games, other books. Just kind of check out what's there and see if anything else like hits you. Because it's way better to work on something when you actually are like, oh wait, this makes sense. I can do it, and it's gonna be good. Than just going forward and doing another thing and another thing and another thing. It makes perfect sense to take a breather for a while. Yeah.
Hmm.
Talking about story again a little bit, did you actually include branching narratives in the game a little bit? I know, or did you could not include that in the game? Was there some kind of
Hmm.
effort to bring also replayability on the story side and not just on the gameplay side?
Yeah, so the game has four endings in total,
Good.
and it depends on the choices you make throughout the story, and also how you play. And by how you play, I don't mean like Dishonored, where like if you kill a bunch of enemies, then the ending becomes a different one. There is a trust system in the game, and actually you can see it up here. It says I have 24% trust, and so that also influences what the ending is going to be. So the trust rating is like how much Steve, the guy in the balaclava, how much does he trust you? And if you go around killing civilians on levels where there is social stealth, you're going to lose trust. If you make decisions that Steve doesn't like, or is like, against, or is like a bad thing to do, then you also lose trust. And this plays into the ending. And yeah, so there are basically four different endings, and there you have it.
Okay. I'm actually glad I asked the question because I was not, during my time with the game, I did not find out about the trust system fully. So it's even better because, yeah, you're also, again, even though you say you're not putting a lot of effort into the story, you are actually interlinking it always with aspects of gameplay, which is
Hmm.
something that a lot of devs tend not to do so strictly. So this, I think, really is a good option to, yeah,
Hmm.
always give the players more indirect ways to affect their experience instead of just this direct
Hmm.
dialogue choice. Boom, boom, boom. It's actually about what you're doing in the game. I
Hmm.
think that's great.
And to
Yes.
go back to the trust aspect of the game real quick, if you noticed, I was just receiving training from Steve, and the trust rating also plays into the training system, where Steve will refuse to train you in things that he is good at if he doesn't trust you enough. So it's like the way I designed the game is I tried to connect as many facets of it as possible. And so even like to go back even further in regards to the stream, the story ties into the gameplay in more than just, it gives you different endings. The story basically influences how much you can get from Steve, as the character. So in this case, if your trust rating is low, you can't get training. If you don't get training, you, for example, will have less health, or you will move slower when you're carrying a lot of weapons, or you will reload weapons slower, or you will be worse at hand-to-hand combat, so throwing punches and stuff like that. So I try to just connect all of it as much as possible, because I believe that little things like that is what make games great and fun to play.
I 100% agree. We are coming to the end of our time. So, what I would do now, Roman, is ask you if you have anything else you want to share, anything relevant that you want to bring up, or that you want to leave our audience with as we close up the stream.
Yeah, so I would like to say that work on the game has not yet finished, in the sense that there are still going to be content updates for the game. Right now, the plan is to add workshop support for the game, integrate the level editor into it so that people can make their own levels and share it with other people to play and have fun. And aside from that, I also intend to port over the campaign of the first game to the second game, because when I was working on Intravenous 2, there were many times where I would have to go back and release some kind of bug fix patch for the first game. And every single time I would fire up the game and test the fixes, I would think to myself, something is not right, something is missing. And the reason for that is very simple. There are so many improvements in the second game over compared to the first one, but the first game just feels like amateur hour at this point. It's one of those things where you, as a creator, you go back to your previous works and you kind of cringe at how bad
Yeah,
some things were. And so, yeah, that's the plan. Port the campaign
good.
over so that people can experience the first game with all the bells and whistles of the second one, because a lot of things in the second game are, you can't show them on screenshots, but the moment you start playing the games back to back, so you play the first one and then you play the second one, you immediately feel the changes and you're like, oh my god, this is so much better.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you're planning on doing, for example, a DLC or something, including this campaign that you're planning.
Yeah, that's the plan. The plan is to make it a DLC and not a very expensive one,
Mhm.
because uh, basically I'm porting over the campaign and improving the levels, and Extruller and I, the composer who made the soundtrack for the first and the second game, we're also updating all the tracks for the first game, and we're adding a couple of new ones because I didn't have the budget for the first game to have a unique musical track for every single level. So as much as it is a port, it's also an improvement in as many fronts as possible.
Awesome. Great. That's also good to hear because people who are thinking maybe now, okay, I'm finishing up Intravenous 2, what can I look forward to? That's something that's in the horizon. They can get a kind of backstory of the Intravenous 1, but with all the nice enhancements that you're going to bring to the table. So that's really good. Not a lot of developers do that. I'm actually think that's a pretty interesting approach from you. Good.
Thank you.
So we didn't get a lot of questions from the audience, so I think we can wrap up. I want
Mhm.
just to thank you once again, Roman, for bringing your expertise on the game and talking to us, giving us this time. to showcase actually Intravenous 2, which is awesome. It's really hard. I'm gonna try and keep getting better at it because I really struggle with it. But it is this game which is like deep and really immersive, and it pulls you in just from the gameplay. So
Mhm.
if anyone in the audience likes this kind of games, I highly, highly recommend. Please check out Intravenous 2. It's one of the finalists of this year for a reason. So yeah, please, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, Roman. Thank you for being here, audience. And we will continue with the sessions in this afternoon.
And
Bye
thank
bye,
you for
guys.
having me here, Nuno.